Hi, this is Dr. Prof. Peterson at Mercyhurst University. I'm a political scientist, and this is Coffee Rendezvous.
You know, of all the schools all over the place, why come here to the snow capital of the U.S.?
You know, it's very true. And leaving Northern California.
Well, NorCal is really nice.
And my wife had grown up in Northern California. Family was there, and my nephew came with us, and his mother and grandmother are in Northern California.
Okay.
Oh well, I came because of the job.
Okay.
So one of the things I recently watched on Netflix is the documentary The Square. Tahrir Square, Egypt. Cairo.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. I heard it's very good.
On Netflix. Yeah, it is. I think it's a pretty good documentary. But what I love about it, and I wanted to show it to someone in class, I was trying to figure out how much and things like that. But it's this. I think anyone who watches that in the United States, or any college student who watches this and sees this sort of struggle, will realize that these people in Egypt, many of them at least, have the same hopes and aspirations and dreams that they have, that they're not that different, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of thinking, intellectual individuals who are saying, we want democracy, here's how we're going to get it. In some ways, it's a very personal documentary. It just follows a few people as they go through it. But it's interesting. Yeah.
There are a lot of people, I think, that they go to class and then they go back to their dorm or whatever, and they turn on Call of Duty and they just kind of zone out. I mean, I love playing video games as much as the next guy, but there's a certain time for kind of just looking at, looking at the world around you.
There can be both.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think David Foster Wallace, who committed suicide at a fairly young age, essentially at one point said that the liberal arts education is about getting people to think outside themselves. So getting them to realize there's an outside world and other people in it, and how to sort of think outside just their own individual experience, which is in some way, if you're doing that, at some point you're going to question some things about your own existence and your own thinking.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like when I first read Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh, definitely.
I didn't realize, a novel could be this way. I remember reading it the first few pages, and maybe I just gotten used to like AP English novels, or like a sort of stilted and complex and Hemingway and things like that. But this narrative where it was just like him talking. Yeah. Like here's what happened. He sort of says, here's what happens. This is a true story, more or less, or something to start it.
So you got the election coming up. You've got all these people that have been rumored to be front runners. I mean, there's Chris Christie, who is the rumored GOP front runner.
Presidential politics.
Yeah, presidential politics. Not so much anymore after the whole bridge debacle, all sorts of things. There's Hillary Clinton, a lot of people still going off the whole Benghazi affair. What would you say for the election? What does presidential politics hold in store?
Well, I think in some ways, it's almost a tragedy of American politics, though, because how long ago, 2012, Obama was elected to a second term. Already, it's like we're kind of looking on to 2016. We've already moved on, right? Your 4-year term is not even halfway over. We're moved on. And that's actually, I think the question's actually good, because that's sort of the way American politics moves. And so when I was teaching American government last term, I added in this sort of newer part of a lecture that was called Lame Ducks. And it was basically what happens to presidents in their second term and how they sort of lose a lot of power. And that's one of the reasons why. It's like, he's not even 2 years in that 4-year term. Everyone's starting to turn and look ahead. It's interesting. I think Hillary Clinton, one challenge with her is age, I think. If she would have beaten Obama in the Democratic primary in 2008, we're probably looking at the first female president of the United States. Now she loses sort of a close primary, goes and joins sort of his administration. Everything points to her and a lot of people wanting her to run. But I think Chris Christie, this latest downfall, has been interesting, because one of the things people like about Chris Christie is he's not, he's considered a more moderate Republican, at least coming from a blue state. But we'll see. I mean, one of the dangers of investigations like the Chris Christie Bridgegate is they tend to bring up other things that bubble up. Right? So you remember Monica Lewinsky, right? When Monica Lewinsky scandal hits for Clinton, the whole investigation up to that is not about him and Monica Lewinsky. It's about other things. It's about other investigations. And from depositions and interviews and things like that, that's when Lewinsky comes in.
Yeah.
So we'll see what bubbles up. But Christie, I think, certainly seems like he wants to run for president. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember after Hurricane Sandy, and everyone kind of looked at Christie as being like this great savior of New Jersey, and he was, rallying back, and then all of a sudden this whole bridge thing happened, and it was like, one or two things, and then it got picked up by major news sources, and then all of a sudden it was like a plane crash,
Yeah,
and watch him fall.
And you wonder if it's going to get worse or get better. Now the key thing with that is like, I find this notion of interesting of kind of like him being a bully. It's kind of an interesting idea to think about. But right now, at least, there's no evidence directly that he knew of what was happening.
Yeah.
Right? So if he can keep that buffer, he's probably okay. But if it turns out that they're like, no, it's clear that he ordered this one of the busiest bridges in the world to be essentially to be limited and have all these people delayed and medical emergencies and kids going to school, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Especially because it seems so petty.
It does.
Why?
Yeah, it definitely does. And that was one of the things, at least I saw, and like I heard a lot of when this whole thing came out, it was like, wow, that is really childish of you, And it's
why do powerful people do really childish, petty things?
Oh yeah, it's wild,
One of the things that I enjoyed coming here and getting in the political science department here is that I thought you really do get a feel of being able to see how a lot of different things play into your political self and the world around you. So I teach political psychology, which is almost like getting inside the brain of the individual. But then you took geopolitics, which essentially is how do these nations struggle with each other, right?
Yeah.
Our global issues with Dr. Ripley, this sort of idea. And the J-term course that Dr. Duncan taught, human integration. Pretty great idea, not one, also to travel to Arizona during the J-term.
Oh,
during
well,
January.
of course.
It was a very good idea. But also this
Definitely.
thinking about the world around you and immigration and what does it mean? And is this a personal sort of thing rather than simply, sort of a broader kind of how does this whole society seem to work? That's what I like political science.
Yeah, something we wanted to get with everybody that we do an interview with. Reaching back in time, what was your first car?
First car. First car. Well, we didn't have very much money, and it was. I have an older brother who's 2 years older than me.
Okay.
And at one point, and these years won't make very much sense to you guys because you were not born, but. At one point, we got a 1981 Toyota Celica. And this was far into the 90s, okay? This was far into the 90s. But this car was like so well maintained. It was whoever had owned this car had just done a wonderful job. And my brother and I, that became sort of our car. And my brother just started systematically destroying it in various ways. It's like, why can't we have nice things?
Obviously, social media is, it's a big thing, but like... Right. Do you think there's room to expand social media in politics? Do you think it's at this plateau, or can it keep growing?
I think it's very interesting. I teach a media and politics class, and it's a fun class. And you can look at a lot of the classic medias and TV broadcasting. You can look at all the controls of it. But social media, I think, really opens things up in a very interesting way.
Yeah.
Now the challenge, though, it's somewhat a challenge for your generation as well, is that. There's a risk factor with all social media, right? Yeah. But just the risk of things you said being on the record becomes a very interesting thing for your generation, largely. Like Facebook, other people's Facebook pages, people tweeting about you. But I do think in politics, it becomes this great thing. And so one of the papers that Dr. Sush Goharn in Political Science and I are working on is whether members of the European Parliament are using Twitter.
Okay.
And so in the European Parliament, there's all these questions about, is there democratic shortfall? Is there this gap where they're not a really democratic institution? Well, if you use Twitter and people can tweet at you and they can follow you, social media can really involve them in the process in an interesting way.
Yeah.
But it's a risk.
It is. There's a huge risk.
Yes. What you tweet today is not gone tomorrow.
No.
On the other hand, in places like Tunisia, places like Egypt, they called it the Twitter revolution because people were using it to get opinion out that otherwise would be silenced.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that's good for young people and students, even when I was a young person, is to get a sense for what's out there in the world and where the boundaries kind of are on some of these things.
Yeah.